If I sing well, will you give me a plate of food? The hallway behind the main stage of the National Talent Showcase was loud, bright, and full of people who knew they belonged there. Kids in fresh clothes. Parents with expensive cameras. Assistants carrying trays of snacks and water bottles. It was the kind of place where everyone walked fast, talked loud, and acted like every second was part of a big dream. And right in the middle of all that noise stood a small girl who didn't fit the picture at all. Zara Ellis Johnson. 10 years old. Barefoot. Dust on her legs. And a broken ukulele held tight against her chest like it was the only thing in the world she trusted. Most people walked past her without even seeing her. Some looked briefly, then turned away. A few pulled their children closer. But Zara didn't move. She kept her eyes on one man, the producer running the show. Grant Miller. A man who believed he was important. A man who liked people knowing he was important. His suit was clean, his shoes were shiny, and his voice carried in every direction as he shouted instructions at the staff. Zara stepped forward and lifted her chin, even though her body was shaking from hunger. "Sir," she said softly. Grant didn't look at her at first. He only turned when she spoke again, a little louder this time. "Sir, if I sing well, will you give me a plate of food?" The whole hallway froze. Then Grant laughed. Not a small laugh. Not a confused laugh. A loud, cruel laugh that echoed down the walls and made his assistants join in. One of them even walked away to hide her smile. Another whispered, "She's serious?" Grant wiped the corner of his eye like she had just told him the funniest joke he'd heard in weeks. "A plate of food," he said. "Sweetheart, this is a talent show, not a charity line." Zara didn't answer. She held her ukulele tighter. Grant shook his head. "Put her last," he told an assistant. "Very last. After the real performers." His words hit her like cold water, but she didn't flinch. Not even once. Backstage, the contrast was painful to watch. The other kids were being pampered. Snacks, warm jackets, bottled drinks, last-minute makeup. They laughed. They practiced. They took selfies. Zara sat alone on the cold floor, her empty stomach twisting, while people stepped around her as if she wasn't even there. But there was something different about the way she watched everything. Her eyes were calm. Too calm for a child. Like she was studying every insult, every whisper, every door that closed in her face. The narrator's voice comes in here. Most people saw a hungry child with a broken instrument. But Zara carried something no one else in that building knew about. Something hidden deep in her backpack. Something that would flip this entire show upside down. Zara slowly reached into her worn-out bag and touched a sealed envelope. A letter. The last thing her aunt had ever given her before she died. Zara kept it with her everywhere she went, but she had never opened it. Not yet. She closed her eyes for a moment and breathed deeply, as if she could hear her aunt's voice again, reminding her why she had come. Then she stood up, wiped her hands on the side of her dress, and whispered to herself, "It's time." Before we continue, make sure you subscribe, because what happens when Zara steps onto that stage is nothing close to what anyone expected. Backstage at the National Talent Showcase looked like a small world where only certain people were allowed to shine. Every corner was filled with makeup brushes, bright mirrors, clean costumes, soft blankets, and warm food. Assistants carried trays of snacks, fruit cups, muffins, sandwiches, small bottles of cold water with the show's logo printed on them. And in the middle of all that comfort sat Zara Ellis Johnson, on the cold concrete floor, her back against the wall, her broken ukulele resting across her legs. No one offered her a chair. No one offered her water. No one asked if she was okay. They stepped over her feet like she was part of the building. A girl in a gold dress complained her soup was not hot enough. Another child cried because her hairstylist put too much gel. One boy pushed away a plate of food and said he wanted something less boring. Zara watched it all quietly. Her stomach hurt from hunger, but she didn't complain. She just kept her eyes on the snack table in the corner, hoping maybe, just maybe, someone would let her take one small thing. After a few minutes, she stood up, brushing dust off her dress, and walked toward the table. The moment she got close, A woman in a headset blocked her with her arm. "Sweetie, no," the woman said with a fake smile. "These are for the official contestants." "I am a contestant," Zara said gently. The woman blinked, then checked her list. Her smile faded. "Oh, you're that girl." She didn't say it with kindness. She didn't say it with respect. She said it the way someone would talk about a stain on their shirt. "Sorry," the woman whispered, but her eyes said she wasn't sorry at all. "You'll have to wait." She nudged Zara back. Not a hard push, but a clear one. A push that said, "You don't belong here." Zara stepped away and went back to her spot on the floor. As she sat down, a group of 3 girls walked past her. They wore matching outfits, sparkling tops and white sneakers. Their hair was perfect. Their skin glowed. They looked like they had never worried about anything in their lives. One of them, the tallest, slowed down and stared at Zara. Aubrey Lawson, 12 years old. Wealthy. Confident. Used to attention. Used to things going her way. She wrinkled her nose. "Why does it smell like the street?" Her friends giggled. Aubrey looked Zara up and down. "What are you wearing? Is that your real dress?" Zara didn't answer. She didn't need to. The dress spoke for itself. Faded, thin, stretched from years of use. Aubrey's eyes moved to the ukulele. "What is that?" she asked. "It looks like it came from the trash." "It did," Zara said softly. Aubrey laughed loudly. "Are you serious? Oh my God. You're going to play that on stage." Her friends laughed even harder. Zara kept her face calm, but she held the ukulele a little tighter. A staff member passing by overheard them and smirked. "Don't worry about her," he told the girls. "She's the comic relief act. End of the show. Something to make the audience laugh." The girls giggled again and walked away. Zara looked down at the ukulele. Its chipped wood, its missing string, its peeling paint. But in her hands, it didn't feel like trash. It felt like home. It felt like the only thing she had left from the person who had loved her. Aunt Miriam. The memory came back slowly, like a warm voice entering a cold room. She was in Aunt Miriam's small church. Wood floors. Soft light. A cracked piano in the corner. Miriam standing behind her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Again," Miriam would say. "From the top. Breathe from your belly, not your chest. Feel the note before you release it." Zara would try again. And again. And again. Miriam was patient, but firm. Her voice training wasn't just singing. It was discipline. It was purpose. It was survival. "You don't need money to have a powerful voice," Miriam told her one night. "You don't need perfect clothes. You only need truth. And truth lives right here." She pressed her hand to Zara's chest. "Right where your courage sits." Zara didn't understand it then. But she understood it now. She closed her eyes on the cold backstage floor and let herself see Miriam's face one more time, tired but still full of love. Then she remembered the last day. The hospital room. Miriam's thin fingers holding her hand. The small envelope she pressed into Zara's palm. "Open this when the world tries to break you," she whispered. "Not before." Zara felt the weight of the sealed letter inside her backpack now. She hadn't opened it yet. She hadn't needed to. But today felt different. Today felt like the world was trying its best to crush her. Aubrey's laughter. Grant's cruel jokes. The cold floor. The hunger. The way people looked at her like she was nothing. Zara took a slow breath. Then another. The narrator speaks here. Pain shapes some children into shadows. But it shapes others into storms. And the people backstage had no idea what kind of storm Zara was about to bring. She opened her eyes, looking toward the stage. Her time was coming. And she would be ready. For a long moment, Zara stayed seated on the floor, holding the broken ukulele across her lap. The noise around her kept rising. Kids laughing, parents whispering, assistants shouting instructions. But she felt strangely still, like she was somewhere far away. A soft breeze from the hallway brushed against her face. She lifted her head slightly. And that was when she noticed him. A man was standing near the far side of the backstage corridor. Not close enough to crowd her. Not staring like the others. But watching her in a way that felt different. Quiet, careful, almost familiar. He was older. Gray at the temples. Dressed in a simple black jacket. Not flashy like the producers. Not frantic like the assistants. He stood with his hands loosely at his sides, as if he was afraid that moving too quickly might startle her. Zara blinked. She didn't know him. But the look in his eyes, that was something she had seen before. A look Aunt Miriam used to give her when she was studying her face, trying to memorize it. The man took a small step forward. Zara looked down shyly, unsure if she should stand or pretend she didn't see him. Before she could decide, his voice reached her. Soft. Steady. Not unkind. "Excuse me, sweetheart," he said. "May I speak with you?" Zara hesitated, then nodded. He crouched a little, not to the ground, but low enough that she didn't have to look up so far. Low enough to show respect. "What's your name?" he asked. Zara swallowed. Her voice was small but clear. "Zara Ellis Johnson." The man froze. Not in shock. Not in fear. But in recognition. His breath left him in a soft, trembling exhale. He blinked, and his eyes shone with a thin layer of emotion he tried to hide by straightening his posture. "Your name is?" "Zara Ellis Johnson," he repeated, as if needing to hear it again. Zara nodded slowly. The man closed his eyes for a moment, steadying himself. When he opened them, he said something she did not expect. "My name is Calvin Hawthorne." Her heart jumped. She had heard that name before. Everyone had. Calvin Hawthorne. Famous actor. Award-winning director. And the CEO of the network hosting the competition. People would do anything just to shake his hand. And he was kneeling in front of her. Before Zara could ask anything, Calvin spoke again, his voice lower this time, almost breaking. "Zara, did you know a woman named Miriam Johnson?" Zara's fingers tightened around her ukulele. "She was my aunt," she whispered. Calvin covered his mouth for a moment, trying to hold himself together. He looked away, as if the memories came too fast. "Miriam wasn't just your aunt," he said quietly. "She was my teacher, my mentor, my anchor when I had nothing." A long breath trembled out of him. "She saved my life," he added. Zara's throat tightened. She had never heard anyone else speak of Aunt Miriam with that kind of love. Calvin looked at Zara again, eyes soft and full of pain. "When she passed, I didn't know she left someone behind." Zara reached into her bag with slow hands. She pulled out the sealed envelope, the one she'd carried for years, and held it out. "She left this for me," Zara said. "Maybe you should read it." Calvin took the letter with both hands, as if it were something fragile. He opened it gently and read the message inside. As his eyes moved across the page, his expression changed. Shock, sadness, guilt, and finally a deep, quiet understanding. The letter revealed everything. Zara's homelessness. Her years alone. The promise Miriam had made him keep. The child he was meant to protect, but never knew existed. Calvin looked at Zara with a heavy heart. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I should have found you sooner. I can stop all this right now. I can take you out of here." But Zara shook her head. "No," she said softly. "Let them do whatever they planned. Just record everything." Calvin stared at her, stunned by her strength. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Yes," Zara replied. "I need them to show who they really are. Then I'll show them who I am." Calvin nodded slowly, a tear sliding down his cheek before he wiped it away. "All right, Zara," he said. "I'll record everything. I promise." And for the first time since she walked into the building, Zara didn't feel alone. Calvin stayed beside Zara a moment longer, letting the truth sink in for both of them. The noise backstage kept moving, doors opening, makeup brushes tapping, kids warming their voices, but around Zara and Calvin, it felt strangely quiet. Like the world had paused just long enough for two people to find the connection they didn't know they needed. Zara placed the sealed letter back in her bag. She didn't say anything, but Calvin could see the way she held it. It wasn't just paper to her. It was strength. It was courage. It was a reminder of the woman who had shaped her before leaving the world too soon. "You don't have to do this alone," Calvin said softly. Zara gave a small nod. "I know. But I still have to do it." Those words stayed with him. Zara stood, brushed the dust from her dress, and walked back toward the hallway. Calvin watched her go. A 10-year-old girl, hungry, barefoot, and underestimated, walking with more calmness than grown adults who lived their whole lives in comfort. It hit him hard. And as he watched her step back into the noisy backstage crowd, he realized something else. Her strength was going to expose every weakness in the people trying to break her. On the other side of the hallway, producer Grant Miller was gathering his team. He was in a good mood. Too good. The kind of mood a cruel man gets when he believes he is fully in control. He clapped his hands loudly. "All right, everyone. Come in close. Time to plan the highlight of tonight's show." One assistant frowned. "The finale?" "No," Grant said with a grin. "I'm talking about our little street girl." A few people chuckled. Grant held up a small remote. "This controls the laugh cue. When I press it, the audience will hear a burst of laughter. Use it the moment she opens her mouth." Another assistant hesitated. "Sir, isn't that a little?" "It's a talent show," Grant snapped. "We need entertainment. And trust me, when she tries to sing, people will lose it." He walked toward the sound technician and tapped the microphone on the table. "This mic," he said, "is going to fail. I want static. Loud static. Make it so bad she can't even hear herself." The technician nodded nervously. Grant pointed to the speakers. "And these. I want them to distort every note. Make it sound like she's choking a stray cat." People forced small laughs, even though a few looked uncomfortable. Grant leaned back with satisfaction. "When she sings," he said, "I want people laughing so hard they cry." Aubrey Lawson, who had been standing with her mother nearby, grinned. Her mother smiled too, the kind of smile that said she was proud her daughter wasn't the one being humiliated. Grant rubbed his hands together. "Trust me, folks. This is going to go viral. Poor little homeless girl tries to sing, fails, ruins the finale. America will eat it up." He didn't know someone was watching. Someone he should never have crossed. Calvin Hawthorne stepped into the hallway just as Grant finished his speech. He kept a neutral expression, but inside, a storm was forming. He didn't confront Grant. Not yet. He didn't shout, didn't raise a hand, didn't let his anger slip. Instead, he turned to his private cameraman, a trusted member of his personal team. "Record everything," Calvin said quietly. "Every word, every action, every moment. Do not stop, no matter who tells you otherwise." The cameraman nodded and lifted his camera even higher. A shift had begun. Not loud, not dramatic, silent, strategic, dangerous. And all of it was moving toward one little girl. Zara sat alone on the same piece of cold floor, touching the sealed letter through her bag. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. Just feeling it, there was enough. It reminded her of Miriam's voice. "Stand tall, my child. Not with pride, but with purpose." She closed her eyes and took a slow breath. The room smelled like perfume, food, sweat, and fresh hairspray. It was loud, overwhelming. But Zara stayed calm. She held her ukulele and let the weight of it settle her nerves. A shadow fell across her feet. She opened her eyes. An assistant stood over her, folding her arms. "You're on in 5 minutes," she said. "Try not to embarrass the show." Zara rose to her feet without a word. She walked toward the side of the stage. The glow of the stage lights spilled into the hallway, warm and bright. Voices from the audience buzzed on the other side of the curtains. Whispers floated around her. Who is she? Why isn't she wearing shoes? Did she wander in from outside? Why does she have that broken thing? Zara stepped closer to the curtain. Her fingers brushed the edge of her ukulele. Her heartbeat slowed. The narrator speaks here. Some moments belong to the people who look the strongest. Others belong to the people everyone thinks are weak. And tonight, Zara's moment was waiting for her on the other side of that stage. She took one final breath and stepped into the light. Zara stepped into the blinding light of the stage, her small figure swallowed by the size of the auditorium. The heat of the lamps hit her face, and her eyes narrowed for a moment as she adjusted. The audience, hundreds of people, sat in front of her like a giant wall, whispering, staring, trying to figure out why a barefoot child with a broken ukulele was standing there. Behind her, the curtain closed slowly. The sound softened. The noise backstage faded into a dull hum. For the first time in a long time, Zara stood in a place where she couldn't run. And she didn't want to. She stepped toward the microphone. Her voice was small but steady. Hello. My name is Zara Ellis Johnson. I'm 10 years old. I want to dedicate this song to my aunt, Miriam Johnson. Some people in the first row exchanged confused glances. One judge raised an eyebrow. Another leaned back, already unimpressed. From the side of the stage, producer Grant Miller folded his arms and smirked. Well, he whispered to his assistant, showtime. Zara lifted her ukulele. Her fingers brushed the strings. The auditorium went quiet. She plucked her first chord. Static exploded. A sharp, burning screech shot through the speakers like tearing metal. People winced and covered their ears. The judges jerked back from the table. Someone in the audience groaned. Laughter began to bubble across the room. A woman whispered, "What is this?" A teenager snickered, "She can't even tune that thing." Someone else muttered, "They're wasting our time." On stage, Zara stayed still. Grant stepped forward pretending to panic. "Oh no! Technical problem. What a shame," he called out, trying to sound concerned. But his voice carried a smile. He even shook his head like he wished he could help. The judge on the far left rolled her eyes. "Let's end this," she whispered to the others. Another gust of static roared from the speakers, worse than before. It echoed off the walls, loud and ugly, drowning Zara out completely. Grant leaned toward the sound technician and whispered, "Perfect. Let it melt their ears." As the laughter spread, Zara felt something shift inside her. Not anger, not fear, a calm understanding. She looked at the microphone, then stepped away from it. No one expected that. Zara walked to the center of the stage, away from the wires, away from the equipment rigged against her. She lifted her ukulele again. Her bare feet touched the wooden floor, grounding her. She closed her eyes. And she sang. No microphone. No speaker. No help from anything but her own breath. Her first note rose clean and warm, drifting out into the auditorium. The ukulele, even broken, softened under her touch. The sound was quiet at first, almost fragile, but it grew, steady, strong, full of life Miriam had planted in her years ago. People stopped laughing. The judges straightened. Even the teenagers who had been whispering leaned forward, forgetting the jokes on their lips. Zara's voice climbed higher, filling the room with a depth no one expected from a child. She didn't shout. She didn't strain. She sang like she had been doing it long before this stage existed. Every note carried truth. Every breath carried memory. Every word carried love. Her voice wrapped around the silent room like a warm blanket. A mother in the third row wiped her eyes. A man near the back lowered his phone, frozen. The judges looked at each other, first in confusion, then in disbelief. Zara held the final note, soft and steady, and released it with a quiet breath that drifted through the auditorium like something sacred. Then came silence. A full, heavy silence that felt alive. For 3 long seconds, no one moved. Then the room erupted. People stood. People clapped. People shouted. Some cried. The applause slammed against the stage like a wave. It washed over Zara, lifting her, wrapping her in something she had never felt before. warmth from people who had seen her for more than her bare feet. More than her old dress. More than the hunger she carried. Backstage, Calvin Hawthorne pressed a hand to his chest. Tears filled his eyes. He didn't try to hide them. He whispered, "Miriam, you were right about her." Grant Miller, on the other side of the curtain, went pale. His smirk vanished. His eyes darted between the stage and his staff. "This isn't happening," he hissed. "Cut the cameras. Cut them." He shouted the order again, louder. "Shut everything down. Now!" Assistants scrambled. Someone reached for the switch controlling the broadcast feed. But it was too late. Calvin's private crew, hidden among the stage cameras, was still recording. Lenses pointed forward. Lights green. Audio clean. Streaming straight to the network's cloud system. Everything Grant planned to hide was already being captured. Zara on stage, singing without fear. The standing ovation. The audience crying. The judges stunned. Grant's panic behind the curtain. Every second of it. Calvin wiped his eyes and whispered to his cameraman, "Keep filming. Don't miss a thing." On stage, Zara lowered her ukulele. Her small hands trembled, not from nerves, but from the weight of the moment. The applause kept rising around her, loud, full, unstoppable. For the first time in years, she felt seen. For the first time since Miriam's death, she felt held. For the first time in her life, she felt worthy of being on a stage meant for the world to watch. The narrator steps in softly. Some performances are just songs. Others are answers. And tonight, Zara Ellis Johnson was answering every person who ever thought a child like her didn't deserve to be heard. The applause continued. Grant's panic grew. Calvin walked toward the stage. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't invisible. People saw her. People heard her. And she stood there, letting the moment wash over her. The applause didn't slow down. It rolled through the room like thunder, steady and full. Zara stood in the center of it, her small hands still wrapped around the neck of her ukulele. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't crying. She was simply breathing, letting the room hold her for the first time in her life. Behind the curtain, Grant Miller paced in a tight circle. His face was red. His hair, usually slicked back, was now out of place. Every shout from the audience felt like a punch. "This can't be happening," he muttered. "She wasn't supposed to sound like that. She wasn't supposed to." He looked at his terrified assistant. "Cut the feed." We can't," the assistant stammered. "The backup system is still running." Someone activated a second network line. Grant froze. "Who?" The assistant swallowed. "Calvin Hawthorne's crew." Grant's eyes widened. The color drained from his face. "Oh no," he whispered. Because everyone in that building knew one thing. When Calvin Hawthorne wanted something recorded, nothing in the world could stop it. Grant took a step toward the stage entrance, but before he could get far, a shadow passed him. A man walked by with calm steps, steady, sure, without rushing. Calvin Hawthorne. His expression was unreadable. Not angry. Not emotional. Just focused. He didn't look at Grant. He didn't need to. His presence alone made the staff step back. Calvin pushed the curtain aside and walked onto the stage. The crowd went silent at once. It was like every breath in the room paused. Even the judges stood, shocked. Cameras zoomed in. People whispered his name. Zara turned slowly, unsure if she was imagining what she saw. But there he was, Calvin Hawthorne, walking toward her under the bright stage lights, his face softening as he reached her side. He took the microphone gently from the stand. "Good evening," he said, his voice calm but firm. The audience leaned forward. Even the ones who didn't recognize him could feel the weight of his presence. "My name," he continued, "is Calvin Hawthorne. Some of you may know me from film. Others may know me as the CEO of this network." A soft gasp moved through the room. Calvin looked down at Zara, then out at the crowd again. "This young girl," he said, "is not a random contestant. Her name is Zara Ellis Johnson." Zara felt her heart stop for a moment. He said her name with pride, not pity. She is the niece of Miriam Johnson, Calvin continued. A woman who changed my life. A woman many of you never knew, but whose voice shaped my career, my discipline, and my purpose. He lowered the microphone for a second, gathering himself. The memory clearly pressed against him. Miriam was my mentor when I had nothing, he said quietly. She trained me. She guided me. She held me up when the world didn't believe in me. And years later, I promised her that if she ever needed me, I would show up. The room was silent. She passed away before I could keep that promise, Calvin said, his voice thickening. And I had no idea she left someone behind. I didn't know about Zara. I didn't know she was alone. I didn't know she was living on the streets. He looked directly into the nearest camera. But I know now. The crowd shifted, many already wiping their eyes. Calvin's tone changed, still calm, but sharper. And I also know about the sabotage planned backstage. Gasps. Whispers. Heads turning. Yes, Calvin said. What you heard earlier was no accident. A child was targeted, humiliated, treated like entertainment instead of a human being. He pointed to the curtains. And the person responsible is producer Grant Miller. A spotlight operator, already instructed by Calvin's crew, flashed a beam toward the side of the stage. Grant squinted under the light, frozen like a trapped animal. The crowd erupted in boos. Loud, raw, angry. Grant tried to speak, but his voice broke. I didn't. Security appeared behind him, large and silent. They took him by the arms. The audience cheered as he was escorted out. Phones came up. People recorded. Some shouted that he should be ashamed. Others told him to never work in TV again. Calvin waited until the noise settled. Then he turned back to Zara. He didn't kneel fast or dramatically. He went down slowly, respectfully, so she wouldn't feel small. When he spoke, the microphone was far from his mouth, but the audience could still hear him. Your aunt saved me, he said. Now let me honor her through you. Zara's eyes filled instantly. She didn't cry loudly, just a quiet release, a small trembling breath. Calvin placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, not pulling her closer, just letting her know he was there. The audience stood. All of them. Some clapped. Some cried openly. Some held their hearts. Some whispered, "Thank God someone stepped in." Zara looked out at the sea of people and felt the warmth of every face watching her with real care. Not judgment. Not pity. Just human connection. The narrator's voice comes in softly. She walked onto that stage as a child who had been ignored, mocked, and doubted. But in this moment, she stood as a child finally seen. The applause rose again, louder than before, stronger, filled with something honest. And Zara stood there beside Calvin Hawthorne, breathing in the kind of moment that reshapes a life. Top of form. Bottom of form. The night Zara sang on that stage, the video spread faster than anyone expected. Within hours, her performance was everywhere. Shared, reposted, downloaded, talked about on every corner of the internet. People didn't just hear her voice. They felt it. They felt the hunger behind it, the courage inside it, and the truth it carried. Clips of the sabotage leaked too, and viewers were outraged. Comment after comment poured in, defending Zara, calling her strength unbelievable for a child, and demanding she be treated with dignity. Her name became a headline, not because she was homeless, but because she had sung with a heart bigger than her circumstances. Calvin Hawthorne acted quickly. He made an announcement the next morning during a press conference that reached millions. The creation of the Miriam Johnson Music Foundation, named after the woman who shaped his life and unknowingly shaped Zara's too. And Zara? She was the first child accepted into the program. The foundation provided her with everything she had been missing: stable housing, warm meals, clothes that fit, and a safe place to sleep every night. But more than that, it gave her something she had never imagined she would have. A real chance to grow. Calvin arranged for a private vocal coach, professional music lessons, and emotional support. Zara's days slowly shifted from survival to learning, practicing, and being surrounded by people who believed she belonged in their world. She adjusted quietly at first. She was still the girl who had slept on sidewalks and held a broken ukulele for comfort. But little by little, she learned how to breathe in safety, how to live without fear, how to trust that the kindness around her would last longer than a moment. Aubrey Lawson, the girl who once mocked her backstage, did something unexpected. She sent Zara a handwritten letter. Messy handwriting, shaky sentences, but honest. "I'm sorry," it said. "I should not have treated you that way." Zara read it twice before folding it neatly. She didn't hold anger anymore. She had grown too much for that. She wrote a short reply, kept the words simple, and ended it with the same grace Miriam once taught her. "I forgive you." Months passed, and Zara's life transformed. She no longer performed in front of people who wished her failure. She stood on stages filled with respect, with light, with opportunity. Then came the biggest moment of all. A live broadcast. A full orchestra behind her. Hundreds of musicians. Every seat in the auditorium filled. Millions watching from home. Zara stepped onto the stage, not barefoot this time, but steady and confident. She wore a simple dress, nothing flashy, nothing loud, and in her hands was the ukulele Calvin had restored. Not replaced. Restored. The cracks filled. The wood polished. The missing string replaced. The old paint cleaned but not erased. It was still the same instrument. Still the same story. Still the same girl. She lifted it to her chest, bowed to the conductor, and began her song. Her voice moved through the hall like warm air on a cold morning. Clear, full, alive. The orchestra rose behind her, lifting every note until the room felt weightless. People cried. People smiled. People stood long before the song ended. And Zara didn't hide from any of it. She let it wrap around her the way the applause once did. She let the moment settle in her bones. When the camera closed in on her face, she delivered the message that had stayed in her heart since the beginning. "I dedicate this to every child who feels unseen. You are not forgotten. You are not small. You are not alone." The narrator closes softly. Sometimes talent grows in the places the world tries hardest to throw away. And as the lights dimmed and the orchestra played her out, the final message to the audience came clearly, spoken with warmth. If Zara's journey moved you, the way a hungry little girl turned cruelty into courage, then don't forget to subscribe. Stories like hers remind us that true strength isn't about fighting back. It's about rising so high that the people who tried to break you no longer matter.